we're psyched to be here today. We have hopefully a very interesting panel. We are going to be talking about like beyond the stadium, the idea of fan experience being a 24/7 sort of mentality idea. Some people call it a persona. I want to start with a non-scripted question, just to keep you on your toes, panelists. Let's go. I think it's important to define this. So when we're talking about fan experience, like some people think it's like just the stadium. Some people think it's like sitting at home watching it. Some people think it's always on, all the time. Like, how would you define fan experience firstly, to then get into what we're going to talk about?
I would say fan experience is an all-immersive, fully emotional, completely dedicated, and often irrational kind of vibration that exists within your body. I think that's how I would define it. I think fans are often, they are crazy, passionate, dedicated, loyal, again, irrational, but that's what makes fandom so beautiful to me.
That's pretty good.
Well, what he said pretty much takes the cake, but fandom, it is about pageantry, it's about tradition, it's about excitement, it's about having something to look forward to, and to feel like you're a part of something much bigger than yourself.
Well, I think you guys nailed it, but maybe I'll talk about it more from the perspective of travel. Like, I think people think about the fan in the moment at the event, but we like to think about the fan experience across the journey, from the moment you get excited about going to that event all the way through your experience and even afterwards.
I'll just add it's saying we, even though I've never played for any of these teams that I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. It's something that's part of you. Yeah. You become part of it. So that's a great transition into, now let's talk about AI. No, so, Peggy, first question for you. But before we get into that, I believe you have some news about passion and fandom that you would like to share.
Yes, we just announced today that we will be the official hotel supporter of the FIFA World Cup that's coming. So, yeah, very exciting. I have a little gift for you. We'll see if you can catch it.
Oh, Lefty, what's up?
You did not hands catch it, though, Mike. You used your body.
I didn't survive the ground. Okay. So, Peggy, first question. Like, obviously, you just mentioned it, but what you're doing at Marriott is very much about helping people have the best fan experience through that whole journey, like you just said. So, moving beyond like a place to sleep to an enabler of those experiences. So how are you using sort of data around doing that for your customers?
Yeah, so we are learning more about who you are, right? What your passions and preferences are. And today with our 30 brands and experiences, we want to be able to curate their best experience for you. So that is all a result of how we use our data. We have over 400 attributes from our audience that you can use to target. But at the end of the day, I think, we used to think about targeting or marketing each of our individual brands. And today we're thinking more about the individual and what drives you to travel. And today that is your passions and experiences. So as a hotel company, yes, we want you to stay with us and sleep with us, but more importantly, we want to be the brand that's going to be with you over your lifetime. And if we're going to do that, we have to understand what you love and what you care about.
That's a great point. So Matt, I'll take it to you. Obviously, at Transunion, you live in data. So I guess one of the questions here is, how do you, with real amazing stats, like people get a 7x return on their spend when they're able to really drive through to identity resolution and really target people well. So how do you help companies like Marriott be able to do that?
Yeah, listen, I love what Peggy just mentioned, because for a lot of marketers, they haven't stitched all that data together. And so, yeah, what we do is we are an enabler of this great, relevant, personalized experience that everyone wants to create. So we don't create the experiences, we enable them. And we do that because we have data on all the consumers in the US. We have 15,000 attributes, right? So 400 in travel, but 15,000 across all different categories. And so our job is to stitch that together so that brands like Marriott can create those experiences. And it ultimately, the reality is for most marketers, they haven't put together all those pieces. And there is a disconnection, and you don't actually realize that I might stay at the W1 trip and a JW the next trip, and you don't always have those signals. And so we really work to make that 360 view possible. That's our role.
Right. Okay, so Emmanuel, for you, you've built a media empire, and you've done that in sort of both around and in between games and in between sports. In addition, driving meaningful conversations outside of the sports world. But your audiences are very fragmented. They're on all different platforms. You're on all the different platforms. It's not like you have one sort of singular moment with them. So how do you, given what Peggy and Matt are talking about, the use of data to find the right people, how do you think about technology and connecting one-on-one with your fans and with your consumers off all the different platforms that they're on?
Well, first, Peggy, I have an announcement to make. I recently switched my loyalty to Marriott.
Yes.
And
Hold on.
it's one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. So I just had to get that out my chest. It was weighing heavy on my heart.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Of course. No, for me, it's understanding that you're creating what your audience wants as opposed to creating what you want to create. It's getting rid of your ego. I was looking up a Fortune 500 company, and the CEO was talking about it's not creating the content that you want to create, but what does your consumer want to consume? And so I look at the data after every show right now. I do a show immediately after every NFL game, all the primetime games, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and I see, okay, this is what they engage with the most. Y'all like when we talk about Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. You love when we talk about Shador Sanders of the Cleveland Browns. You hate when we talk about this college team. So let's talk about what you want to talk about more. It's not about what Emmanuel Acho wants to talk about. It's what you want to listen to. And so for me, it's removing your ego and creating what your consumer actually wants to digest as opposed to simply creating what you want to create. It's not about you. It's about the fan.
See, that's a wonderful point, because you're using technology in two ways. You're using it to reach people where they are by using those platforms, but you're using it as an intake to figure out what they want to talk about and how to connect with them. So, Jen, for you, you've worked with huge brands, DoorDash, Patagonia, et cetera, on creating, a way to connect those brands and their messages with everyday life for their consumers, and you're helping creative teams scale with AI. Now, one of the biggest concerns for a brand, especially in the era of AI, is like brand consistency and how to ensure that you're telling the right story in the right place and the brand is consistent across that. And so I guess if we're thinking about fan experience and technology and that two-way relationship, like where does it sit on the pendulum in what you're enabling creative teams to do between consistency and then personalization to reach people the way they want to be reached, or at least meeting them where they are in their conversations?
It's quite a question.
You're welcome.
I think there was like 8 questions there. But if there's one thing all great brands have in common, it's consistency. And what we do know, like I work for a company called Superside. We are an AI-powered creative agency that works with companies all over the world, including a lot of sports companies. And what we have learned about AI is that it's really bad at brand standards. Like we've seen what AI thinks is on brand, and it's pretty crummy. And so that means like what AI has done is it is enabled to scale content, so we can create a lot more content. We can create it at higher volume, but it also makes our job as marketers and content creators that much more important, because we are now like even more important part of that, like brand stewardship. And that 360 experience that we're talking about today, like AI has made it possible for there to be 25 touch points in that experience, not 5 like 2 years ago. And so it's even more important now that each of those 25 touch points are on brand and consistent.
So I think the world has sort of set up, I think, a false choice, that you can have consistency and scale of that consistency versus like intimate personalization, like one-on-one level. And I don't think that that's the choice, which kind of takes us to like our second section of this, which is like scale versus soul. So very much like what you're talking about, Emmanuel, is like, I want to connect with the people, I see what they want to talk about, I'm going to respond to that. And like the goal of personalized marketing is like, I can hit the right person with the right message at the right time, and AI can certainly help with that. And, the data would show us that 89% of consumers are sort of concerned about data privacy, but the only way to get to that like personal connection is data privacy. So Matt, my question is for you, like, how do you balance that? And do you think there's a quid pro quo? Because there is also a lot of research that would show that people feel fine to share their data and be transparent if they're getting value from it. So like as a company like Transunion, how do you think about that?
Yeah, listen, I think you've highlighted the key, which is relevancy, value, a value exchange. Listen, again, our role here as an enabler is to make sure that the data that we provide for marketers is well sourced, it's ethical, it's consented, and it's used in the right ways. So our job is to stitch that together, and when we're advising clients and marketers to figure out what that balance is, we say, well, is this data relevant to your story? Is this something one of your consumers is going to want to hear from you? You know, and if you're staying in that lane, if it feels authentic to your brand and to your message, you're in a good spot. Now you better make sure you are sourcing the right set of data. There are a lot of, unfortunately, bad actors in this business. And again, if you know our heritage and where we come from as a company that was founded in the world of credit and having to understand whether a bank should give you a loan, right, that's a very personalized, very sensitive set of information. We apply that same level of rigor and governance to all of our marketing data. And so it's important to make sure you're working with partners like Transunion. We're not the only one, but we are certainly one of the most reputable firms out there doing that. And if you start there and then you make sure it's relevant to your story, I think you're in a good spot. But again, make sure it's something the consumer is going to want to hear from you, and you're not crossing that line.
Right. And so Jen and Peggy, like on the brand side of things, you know, Jen, you've talked about I think the stat was like last year you did like 3,000 AI enabled projects, deliveries. Like, how do you walk that line with, you know, connecting with people, being human, having a soul, the brand being able, the assets, the content, being able to connect with people, but then, you know, also not being creepy, especially, for example, in a place like a hotel where like it could be too much?
Well, I like to say it like make it personalized, not personal. And so I think one thing AI is actually really good at is like getting to the heart of something. And so I think in like the fan experience and going back to like the sports, like AI is good at knowing why someone is a fan. Is it the players? Is it the logos? Is it a stadium experience? Like what is that? And then it can use that data to market those more of those experiences to them. But again, keep it personalized, not personal.
And maybe I'll talk about, you know, that consistency you were talking about. Like our brand stands for quality, consistency, and trust. Like we've been building that for years, right? And I think that has given us the foundation to build the trust. And that trust allows people to want to tell us more about their passions and their preferences. It's interesting, like sometimes I'll read these emails and, you know, people will proactively write us and say, here are all the things that I want when I'm there for my stay, right? And we're in the enviable position of people wanting to tell us what they want. We actually, though, want to be very careful about what we ask for. We want to make sure we can deliver on it before we ask. And so I think that brands have this responsibility of trying to make sure whatever you ask for, that you do something appropriate with, and that you continue to build that cycle of trust.
Right.
You have to care in that way. And for us, Bonvoy is a membership. Yes, it's about points, but really it's about a relationship, right? And it's the trust we build with you, and it's how we use your data and how we deliver on an experience that's going to keep you in our ecosystem for a lifetime.
So Emmanuel, I think this is a good question for you. Like, you know, how do you think about this? Because you're making content and trying to connect with people, and you can't make, if you have 100 million, you know, people that consume a piece of content, you can't make 100 million versions of that content. So how do you think about this in terms of balancing, like keeping it personal and intimate with you and your perspectives and how you want to connect with people, your thoughts, and then using AI? Or do you think about it at all in terms of giving you scale to connect differently with people as a content creator?
I am fearful of the law of diminishing returns. And so what I noticed in the show I do now on YouTube, it's 2 shows. I thought it was just one, not realizing after about 2 months, I'm doing 2 shows. People are watching the show we're actively doing, but then there's a YouTube chat that's going on during the show we're doing. And in my egotistical mind, I'm like, oh yeah, they watching me. They're not. They're talking to each other about what the hell Emmanuel Acho's talking about. And so as we've tried to scale and gone from 5,000 people watching at a time to 10,000 and 12,000, I've been like, man, do we still have time to involve the chat as we scale? Like, because to involve the chat is to now deviate from the conversation. And now somebody said in the super chats, yo, Acho, that take was crazy, da da da. Do I have time for that? Especially as you get 20,000 viewers. Well, now you have 1,500 chats instead of 15 chats. And so I do believe that is a fear, but I think you have to stay true to your principles. And it's kind of, as Jen spoke to, is like, even as you scale, making sure you continue to do what brought you to that point and make sure you continue to cultivate that personal relationship or that personalized relationship, because that's what makes you, your brand you.
See, I think this is a huge point, and this will get into like the third section of our chat, but like, this really highlights a huge shift. Whereas personalization and like inclusion in an experience and the fan experience,
It's everything.
and it used to be all dialed around like a transaction. Like I wanted you to come to the game or buy a ticket or buy a jersey, or that was like the traditional definition. And it's moved to like this true 360 where it's like, yes, there are many things happening at the same time. I'm watching the game, I'm watching the content, I'm a fan of the team, I'm engaged in the chats, I'm on social consuming while I'm watching another piece of content, while I'm engaged in my fantasy team, while I'm et cetera, et cetera. And it's like all the things all at once. And it's very 360 in that aspect. And so brands, content creators, fans have had to like change their behaviors to like really try to do all the things, everything, all the time, all at once, etc. And so my question then goes back to you, because you've been very active in investing in the next generation sort of simulated sports and AI sports and virtual experiences. And how do you see similar behaviors in fandom? And do you see there being a difference between the human drama on the field and the fan experience around that versus the simulated drama?
I think simulated is actually more fascinating because simulated has a more ownership component. I own a virtual team called SimWin. I own a team in that league, and like you really feel like you're in control of what those virtual players are doing. As a fan, you're not in control. If the Chiefs extend Patrick Mahomes, they do. If Travis Kelce retires, he retires. If he doesn't, he doesn't. You don't actually have any control. It's very we, as we discussed, but you don't have control. Simulated sports, you really feel like it is you as a driving factor. And anytime there's more ownership, there's more investment. And with more investment comes more fandom, comes more money spent, etc.
Absolutely. So to that point, there's like media ecosystems around these things. And Peggy, you've talked about how sort of Marriott is becoming more of like a media network, right? In the sense that you want to be a concierge for the passion that lives around sports. I mean, part of dealing with that is all the partnerships. I mean, it's the same on, on all of our businesses, but like the partnerships that help bring that to life. So how do you think about in this 360 journey, like where you can add value in all the other pieces of that journey through partners?
I think maybe tactically it sounds like a media network, but actually what we're really after is that connected journey. And because data allows us to know you better today beyond one transaction, one stay, we can know what you care about, what you're passionate about, what your preferences are. And then as you're thinking about your travel, from the moment you're thinking about going somewhere, we can start to weave in different things that are relevant to that journey that you're on, right? The journey of planning a trip itself is its own emotional journey. And we've been doing some research around the psychology of travel and the mindset that people are in at the different points in their journey. And people go through lots of up and downs during the planning of a trip to getting ready to go, to when they're actually there and then when they've returned. And if you think about it, there are so many things that you expose yourself to when you travel because you are more open. And that's why we think this idea of bringing partners and brands to meet travelers where they are is super interesting and gets to the opportunity for one-to-one marketing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So let's go a little deeper on it. And Matt, this is for you. This brings up a question about ownership of the data in order to get closer to the fan, to get closer to the customer, to get closer to the viewer, et cetera. Many people think you're out in the world as a person, you're creating data. I believe there's a stat, I'm gonna totally get this wrong, so please do not quote me on this one, but I think there's a stat that like the average human creates like 90 million data points a day just from moving through their life. It feels right, run with it. But it's a lot of data that we create every single day. And like as the world and as AI and as technology gives us the ability to compute this data, I mean, we are at CES, we gotta tie it back, like much faster, the question of ownership starts to really matter. Is there a world where just we're accepting that if we're in the world as people, we're creating data, people are going to use that data against us. Obviously, there's like all the permission stuff on digital platforms. Or is there a world in the future where there's a new market for this, where people who are creating their data can sell and monetize it to brands?
Yeah. Listen, those worlds exist already somewhat today. It's a question that does come up a bunch. I'm not personally in the camp that says we as consumers are going to all take ownership in the way you're talking about, which is to monetize our own assets. I just don't think most of us care enough to make a few dollars that we would make by controlling data in that way. So I think by the way, there are places that happens. There are different types of rewards and loyalty programs where the exchange isn't maybe points, but the exchange is a coupon or exchange is some discount. And that has some, quote, ownership value to it. And clearly that's going to be a value exchange which exists forever. Do I think we'll get to a world where at the core, each of us controls a list of our data attributes and we're going in there and plugging in yes, no, yes, no, yes, no? I don't think most of us care. I do want to just make sure to separate, though, back from the fact that we all own the ability to tell everyone this data is not okay to use, right? Laws require that. Ethical use of data requires that. And so to me, that's just a separate issue that I want to make sure is clear. But I'm not a huge believer in the fact that we are going to control how our data is monetized. I just think we are too busy for that, and we're too interested in the experience more so than the money.
Which makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So Jen, it takes us to you for a question. So the data is usable. You can use your technology to help brands get directly one-to-one, right? With an individual person, we know what they care about, et cetera. Hyper-personalized. Do you ever see a world where there's creative fatigue in that, where the consumer's like, I get it, you know me, et cetera? And the reason I ask this, and Peggy, you just talked about it, there's ups and downs in a journey. Well, specifically around fandom, there's ups and downs. I will give an example. I'm a New York Giants fan. 2008 and 2011 were awesome. Big up. Helmet catch, amazing. The last decade,
Down.
horrible. Sorry.
Just down.
As down as it could be. Sorry, Jet fans. Anyway, ups and downs. And one of the things that we love about sports so much is the surprise. We don't know the outcome. It's why we stay passionate and why we engage. So in a world where you can use the data for like such personalized content and you can scale it with your like technology, is there a worry about that fatigue?
Well, I mean, as marketers, we all worry about ad fatigue. But what's interesting right now is, and we use AI in a lot of the creative that we create for our customers. And we always say, like, especially with regard to our sports clients, like, our creative has to turn fans into fanatics. Like, that is the goal of everything we're creating. And AI right now, it's allowing us to create scale. It's allowing us to personalize more than ever before. But it's also keeping things fresh. So, for example, and this is silly, but I got online this morning and I was like, I'm just going to test this theory out. And what's the team that has the terrible towel?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, there you go. So I was like, all right, Chat GPT, give me a campaign idea that has to do with the terrible towels. Within 20 seconds, you guys, 6 campaigns that were pretty incredible. Like, and it might not be a campaign you actually use, but that gave me 6 jumping off points for different campaigns in 20 seconds. In the past, that would have taken my team 2 weeks. Today, it's taking 2 minutes. And like, that's the cool stuff about AI. And that's like, at Superside, we say like, AI doesn't replace human creativity, it expands upon it. It amplifies it. And that's like how we're gonna keep stuff fresh and exciting and full of surprise.
And in our industry, we think about it the same. Like, the AI is going to allow for more human interaction, right? So to deal with the unexpected and to deliver that more authentic service. In some ways, we've been talking more about the core than ever before because we want that human element to exist. So back to the basics, right? How do we think one-to-one about how to really surprise and delight you based on what we know? That's where the data will come in.
I think you wanted to get in.
Well, I was just going to say I loved Jen's point because when I was trying to name my latest show, I was like, okay, the previous show I was on had the word speak in it. The vacancy in the sports marketplace is at night because there's not really opinion-based shows after the game. There's recap shows after the game, but there's nothing that will make you emote. There's nothing that will make you feel. So I hop on an AI source, and I'm like, okay, give me a show at night with the name Speak in it. And it said speak after dark, it said speak up at night, it said speak at night, and then it said speak easy. And I was like, bingo, speak easy. And what may have taken me 2 weeks, 3 weeks, going back and forth, a brainstorming session with 10 different minds, and may not have gotten there, took me 3 minutes. And then I just had to go through it all. And then, okay, speak easy, speak at night. Let's run it by a couple people close to me. Speak easy it is. And so I do think like AI is your teammate, not your opponent in that sense.
It's such a great point. It also, one of the points you just made about the gap in emoting after the game, like having the place to emote, like in the public forum, in the conversation, not being a recap, like that behavior has existed since like overnight sports radio, right? It was like, I used to sign on after a terrible Knicks loss. You can't tell I'm from New York. And like, WFAN at 10:30 at night, and like Harvey from Forest Hills is yelling about, John Starks' play at point guard. And like, that was amazing because we shared in that experience. So this takes us to our lightning round close. These are all emotions. And we'll go down the chain here. What is the emotion that we just believe technology cannot replicate, the AI-driven personalization content cannot replicate, that keeps fans connected to the experience?
I'm starting? All right. I'm going to go with belonging, right? I think really what we're talking about in all these different, ultimately experiences, whether it's as a fan, whether it's a loyalty member, what the data and what this technology is seeking to do is make us feel more part of something. Right? Technology, though, cannot make us feel part of something. Great content can make us feel part of something. So I think what we've got to remember as marketers is to continue to search for that relevance, which leads to belonging. So that's where I'm at.
I think I was going to say authenticity. Like, it's hard to really, you can use the data, but to really know someone and to really build that deep relationship, that'd be really hard.
I'll say, I mentioned at the beginning, excitement. Like, I think everybody needs something to look forward to. It gives us like hope and promise, and especially with fandom and especially with sports, I think technology has to protect that like sense of excitement.
And I'll give a negative one, but only because it's the antonym to excitement. I'll say anger. And I don't say it in a bad sense, but like apathy is the strongest emotion. That's the one you should all worry about when someone doesn't care about your brand, when they don't care about your show, when they don't care about your team. But if I can make you feel, I have you. Whether you're happy or you're mad, so long as I can make you feel, I have you. And I think I love everybody's answer because it truly is. It's belonging, it's excitement, it's community, it's all those things.
I mean, I think we leave it at that. That was fantastic. Thank you,
Thank you.
panelists,
Thank you,
and
Mike.
thank you, Sport Beach, for having us. Have a great rest of your
y'all.
day.